Sadness and outrage tonight after another school shooting in America.
Good afternoon, this is News 2, and we're following a breaking story today, a shooting at a high school in Littleton, Colorado.
There's word potentially multiple children have been killed. This happened at the Robb Elementary School in the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District.
2012 Colorado movie theater massacre.
7 bodies were discovered in Oklahoma.
2 mosques in Christchurch were targeted, the country's worst mass shooting ever.
Shout out to Jason Mims 5057 for suggesting this case. Mark Lepine was born as Gamel Rodrigue Garbi in Montreal on October 26, 1964, but spent much of his early childhood in Costa Rica and Puerto Rico, where his father was working as a successful mutual fund salesman. His family would move back and forth, but in 1968, his family moved back to Montreal permanently, shortly before a stock market crash led to the loss of much of the family's assets. His mother, Monique Lepine, was French-Canadian, and his father, Rachid Lias Garb, was Algerian. His father did not consider women to be equal with men and believed that the only sole purpose for women was to serve men. Rachid was an authoritarian and had a strict rule set you had to follow, and if you broke any of them, you would be punished. On many occasions, he would even strike his wife and kids over small mistakes. On another occasion in 1970, he beat his son so hard on the face that the marks were visible a week later, causing her to finally leave him, and the divorce was finalized in 1976. After the separation, Gamil lived with his mother and younger sister Nadia, seeing little of their father, of whom they were afraid. Rachid Garbi subsequently ceased contact with his children after a few weekly supervised visits and moved abroad. He would also make little to no effort in paying child support, only doing so twice before quitting altogether. Gamil would never see his father again. He built up hatred for his father and refused to discuss him with anyone. Financially struggling, his mother returned to nursing to support the family, and because of her schedule, the children lived with other families during the week and only saw their mother on weekends. Monique Lepine eventually became director of nursing at the Montreal Hospital, and the family bought and moved to a house in the middle-class Montreal suburb of Pierrefonds. Gamil attended junior high and high school, where he was described as a quiet student who obtained middle to above average marks. He became close friends with another boy, but had a hard time getting along with others. He was also bullied a lot in school, taunted as an Arab because of his name, and at age 14, Gamil changed his name to Mark Lepine, further separating himself from his father and citing his hatred for him as the reason for taking his mother's surname. Even his younger sister Nadia would bully him, and one occasion, publicly humiliated him about his acne and his lack of girlfriends to the point when Lepine would often fantasize about her death, and on one occasion made a mock grave for her. He was overcome with happiness when in 1981, she was placed in a group home because of her delinquent behavior and drug abuse. Mark spent some summers as a youth learning to hunt with his uncles, and also enjoyed designing and building electronic gadgets. He and a friend were also known to shoot and kill pigeons near his house with a pellet gun. He also took considerable responsibility at home, including doing daily chores like cleaning and even repairs when needed, all while his mother worked hard to support the family. Lepine also developed an interest in World War II and an admiration of Adolf Hitler. He seemed like a normal kid from the outside, but nobody but him knew what his mind was slowly being transformed into. In 1981, Mark applied to join the Canadian Forces at the age of 17, but was rejected. He later reported in his suicide letter that it was because he was antisocial. An official statement from the military after the massacre stated that he had been interviewed, assessed, and determined to be unsuitable. He began a pre-university college program in pure sciences in 1982, failing some courses in the first semester, but improving his grades considerably in the second, when he switched to a 3-year vocational program in electronics technology, a 3-year technical program geared more towards immediate employment. Around this time, Lepine and the family moved to Saint Laurent, closer to his mother's work and to his new college. He quickly lost touch with his one close school friend after the move. This period marks the beginning of the 7 years in which he described in his suicide note as having brought him no joy. His teachers remembered him as being a model student, quiet, hardworking, and generally doing well in his classes, particularly those related to electrotechnology. However, in February 1986, during the last term of the program, he suddenly, and without explanation, stopped attending his classes as a result of failing to earn his diploma. Lapine took a part-time job in the kitchens at the hospital where his mother was director of nursing. His colleagues noticed some of his odd behaviors and described him as nervous and hyperactive. He moved out of his mother's home into his own apartment, and in the fall of 1986, he applied to study engineering at the Ecole Polytechnique at the Université de Montréal, but lacked 2 courses required for admission. He was admitted on the condition that he complete 2 compulsory courses, including one in solution chemistry. In 1987, Lapine was fired from the job at the hospital for aggressive behavior, as well as being disrespectful of his superiors and carelessness in his work. He was angered over the dismissal, and at the time described a plan to commit a murderous rampage and then commit suicide, foreshadowing his future to come. After losing the job at the hospital, he took 3 courses at a publicly funded college, obtaining good marks in all his courses. And in March 1988, he began a course in computer programming at a private college in downtown Montreal, funding his studies with government student loans. 2 months later, he moved downtown to an apartment near his place of study and his mother's new condominium. In the winter of 1989, Lapine took a college night course in solution chemistry, a prerequisite course for the Ecole Polytechnique. Around this time, Mark applied again to the Ecole Polytechnique, but was rejected once again because he lacked required courses. But in March 1989, he abandoned the private college course in computer programming, but did well in the night course, obtaining 100% in his final exam. In August 1989, Lapine picked up an application for a firearms acquisition certificate and received his permit in mid-October, and on November 21st, Lapine purchased a Ruger Mini 14 semi-automatic rifle at a local sporting goods store. He had apparently told the clerk that he was going to use the rifle to hunt small game. Around October to December, Lapine was seen at least 7 times at the Ecole Polytechnique institution. 4 days before the shooting, he brought his mother a present, which was strange because it was several weeks before her birthday or any other special occasion. On the cold winter day of December 6, 1989, sometime after 4 p.m., Mark Lapine arrived at the building housing the Ecole Polytechnique institution, dressed in blue jeans, work boots, a dark jacket, and peaked cap. He carried a green polyethylene garbage bag holding 2 30-round magazines and his Ruger Mini 14 rifle. He also had a 6-inch hunting knife looped onto his belt. Mark first sat in the office of the registrar on the 2nd floor for a while, where he was seen rummaging through the garbage bag. He did not speak to anyone. He didn't even make eye contact with anyone. Even when a staff member asked if she could help him, he ignored her by getting up and leaving the office. He would later be seen in other parts of the building before entering a 2nd-floor mechanical engineering class of about 60 students at about 5:10 p.m. Mark was young, about the same age as most of the students gathered in the room. Upon entering, he had a shy smile on his face as he approached a student giving a presentation. He asked everyone to stop everything and ordered the women and men to opposite sides of the classroom. The request was greeted with titters of laughter. Nobody moved, recalled Professor Yvon Bouchard. We thought it was a joke. Until an instant later when he lifted his Mini 14 and fired 2 quick shots into the ceiling. "You're all a bunch of feminists, and I hate feminists," Lapine shouted at the suddenly terrified occupants of room 303. Forcibly at gunpoint, Mark then separated the 9 women from the approximately 50 men and ordered the men to leave. They did so without protest. He asked the women whether they knew why they were there. Instead of replying, a student asked who he was. He answered that he was fighting feminism. One of the students, Natalie Provost, protested that they were women studying engineering, not feminists fighting against men or marching to prove that they were better. He responded by opening fire on the students from left to right, killing 6. Helene Colgan, Natalie Croteau, Barbara Daigneault, Anne-Marie Lemay, Sonia Pelletier, and Annie Saint-Arnaud, and wounding 3 others, including Natalie Provost. Before leaving the room, he wrote the word shit twice on a student project. He continued into the 2nd-floor corridor and wounded 3 students before entering another room where he twice attempted to shoot a female student. When his weapon failed to fire, he entered the emergency staircase where he was seen reloading his gun. He returned to the room he had just left, but the students had locked the door. He failed to unlock it with 3 shots fired into the door. Moving along the corridor, he shot at others, wounding one, before moving towards the financial services office, where he shot and killed Maurice Lagagnère through the window of the door she had just locked. Mark next went down to the first-floor cafeteria, in which about 100 people were gathered. He shot nursing student Barbara Maria Klutznick near the kitchens and wounded another student, and the crowd scattered. Entering an unlocked storage area at the end of the cafeteria, the gunman shot and killed Anne-Marie Edward and Genevieve Bergeron, who were hiding there. He told a male and female student to come out from under a table. They complied and were not shot. He then walked up to the 3rd floor where he shot and wounded 1 female and 2 male students in the corridor. He entered another classroom. Inside, students were unaware of the tragedy unfolding around them and were delivering end-of-semester oral presentations. At first, nobody did anything, recalled Eric Forget. He told the men to get out, shooting and wounding Maris Leclerc, who was standing on the low platform at the front of the classroom, giving a presentation. He fired on students in the front row and then killed Maud Havernick and Michelle Richard, who were trying to escape the room, while other students dived under their desks. "We were trapped like rats," said Eric Forget. He was shooting all over the place. Other eyewitnesses said that Lepine leaped onto several desks and shot at women cowering beneath them. Mark moved towards some of the female students, wounding 3 of them and killing Annie Turcotte. He changed the magazine in his weapon and moved to the front of the class, shooting in all directions. At this point, the wounded Leclerc asked for help. Mark unsheathed his 6-inch hunting knife and stabbed her 3 times, killing her. He then dropped the knife and took off his cap, wrapped his coat around his rifle, and exclaimed, "Oh shit!" as he shot himself in the head, blowing off the top of his skull in the process, ending the attack 20 minutes after it started. About 60 unfired cartridges remained in the boxes he carried with him in his jacket. After the attack ended, most of the injured and all of the dead, except for Mark himself, were women. After briefing reporters outside, Montreal Police Director of Public Relations Pierre Leclerc entered the building. Horrifically, at some point inside, he would find the lifeless body of his own daughter. On the day of the massacre, Lepine wrote 3 letters. 2 were sent to friends, and 1 was found in an inside pocket of his jacket. The letter in his pocket was never officially made public, but was leaked in November 1990 to Francine Pelletier and published in the newspaper La Presse. It contained a list of 19 Quebec women whom the shooter apparently wished to kill because he considered them feminists. The list included Pelletier herself, as well as a union leader, a politician, a TV personality, and 6 police officers who had come to the killer's attention as they were on the same volleyball team. Lepine wrote that he considered himself rational and that he blamed feminists for ruining his life. He outlined his reasons for the attack, including his anger towards feminists for seeking social changes that retain the advantages of being women, while trying to grab those of the men. He also mentioned Dennis Lordy, a Canadian Armed Forces corporal who killed 3 government employees and wounded 13 others in an armed attack on the National Assembly of Quebec on May 8, 1984. Mark Lepine's rampage raised a number of unsettling questions. How did Mark reach the conclusion that simply being female was sufficient cause to justify his victims' deaths? And how a clearly disturbed man was able to obtain a lethal weapon with apparent ease, and how it was possible for a man with a gun to terrorize single-handedly so many people for so long without anyone lifting a hand to stop him. Mark killed 14 women, 12 engineering students, 1 nursing student, and 1 employee of the university, and injured 14 others, 10 women and 4 men before ending his life. So many innocent lives are lost every day to events like these, and over the years it hasn't slowed down a bit. But one thing I've learned is, where there is good, there will always be evil.